Lewis Hamilton has just been hit with a shocking 3-place grid penalty, and the timing could not be worse. In Formula 1, losing 3 positions before the race even begins can destroy tire strategy, trap a driver in traffic, and turn a possible podium into a desperate recovery drive. But the penalty itself is only the beginning. The real problem is what it could reveal about Hamilton's weekend, his relationship with the stewards, and the pressure now building around every decision he makes. One ruling has changed the entire race before the lights even go out, and the most important consequence is not the place he lost. It is the position this puts him in next. Subscribe to the channel. The first thing to understand is that a 3-place grid penalty does not simply move Hamilton back by 3 boxes. It changes the entire shape of his race. Formula 1 starts are decided in seconds. Sometimes, in less than that. A driver can spend an entire weekend searching for 1/10 of a second, only to lose far more than that before the lights even go out. That is why this penalty matters. Starting closer to the front gives a driver cleaner air, more freedom, and more control. Starting further back creates traffic, pressure, and risk. It is like entering a crowded doorway after everyone else has already started pushing through. There is less space, fewer choices, and almost no time to think. For Hamilton, that difference could become enormous. He may now have to attack earlier than planned. He may need to take greater risks into the opening corners. And if he becomes trapped behind slower cars, the tires can begin to overheat while the race leaders escape. But here is what makes this situation even more dangerous. Hamilton is not only fighting the drivers around him. He is fighting the chain reaction created by the penalty. One lost position can change the first corner. The first corner can change tire temperature. Tire temperature can change pit strategy. And one compromised pit stop can decide whether a driver fights for a podium or disappears into the midfield. That sounds dramatic, but in Formula 1, small setbacks rarely stay small. Imagine planning a journey with every traffic light timed perfectly. Then, just before leaving, someone forces you to start several streets behind. The destination has not changed, but every part of the route has. That is now Hamilton's problem. His engineers can prepare different strategies. They can study tire life, overtaking zones, and possible safety car periods. But they cannot control what happens around him when the race begins. And that is where pressure becomes dangerous. Hamilton may need patience, because forcing an early move could damage the car or the tires. But patience also carries a cost, because every lap spent behind another driver gives the leaders more time to escape. Attack too soon, and the race could unravel. Wait too long, and the opportunity could disappear. That is the trap. And there is another layer that most people overlook. A grid penalty does not only affect Hamilton. It affects every driver starting near him. Some will know that a faster car may be directly behind them. Others may defend more aggressively because holding Hamilton back could transform their own race. The opening laps could become more unpredictable, because everyone understands that he cannot afford to remain trapped for long. That changes the psychology of the start. Hamilton will be under pressure to recover positions. The drivers ahead will be under pressure to stop him. His team will be watching tire temperatures, gaps, and pit windows. And the longer he remains in traffic, the more limited his choices may become. But the biggest concern is still hidden. Because this is not only about where Hamilton starts. It is about what he may be forced to do after the start. A driver recovering from a penalty often has to use more tire, more energy, and more risk than originally planned. Each overtake can look like progress, but every move may quietly remove something he needs later. Battery power is not unlimited. Tire grip is not unlimited. Patience is not unlimited. Hamilton could gain positions early and still create a bigger problem for the final part of the race. That is why the first few laps will not tell the full story. A fast recovery may look impressive. It may even look like the penalty has already been defeated. But the true cost could appear much later, when the tires begin to fade, the strategy windows narrow, and the drivers who started ahead still have more resources available. And this is where the situation becomes far more serious than a simple 3-place drop. Because Hamilton may be able to recover the positions. The real question is what he will have to sacrifice to get them back. And that sacrifice may begin long before Hamilton reaches the first corner. Because a grid penalty does something that lap time alone cannot measure. It changes the way a driver approaches the entire weekend. Every braking point feels more important. Every qualifying lap carries more weight. Every small mistake becomes more expensive, because Hamilton is no longer trying to build an advantage. He is trying to recover something that has already been taken away. That creates a different kind of pressure. The pressure is not simply to be fast. Hamilton must be fast without damaging the tires. Aggressive without inviting contact. Patient without allowing the race to escape. And all of those demands can collide within the same lap. That is where the real conflict begins. A driver in Hamilton's position may see an opening that lasts for less than a second. If he attacks, he could recover a place. If he waits, the opportunity may vanish. But if the move goes wrong, the penalty that damaged his starting position could become the smallest problem of the day. One decision can create another investigation. One touch can damage a front wing. One forced trip beyond the edge of the circuit can cost even more time. And suddenly, a 3-place penalty becomes the first link in a much longer chain. But there is an even deeper problem. Hamilton's rivals know exactly what he needs to do. They know he cannot afford to sit quietly behind them. They know the longer they delay him, the more his tires suffer and the further the leaders move away. That gives them something powerful. Leverage. A driver ahead does not always need to be faster than Hamilton across the entire race. Sometimes, that driver only needs to place the car carefully for a few corners. Make Hamilton use extra battery power. Force him onto the dirty side of the track. Make him brake later than he wants. Each small delay creates another cost. Think of it like trying to run through a crowded hallway while everyone else knows you are in a hurry. Nobody needs to stop you completely. They only need to slow you down for a moment. Then another moment. Then one more. By the time the path finally opens, the opportunity at the front may already be gone. And this is where the penalty reaches beyond Hamilton himself. His team must now make decisions with less room for error. A strategy that looked safe from a stronger starting position may suddenly become too cautious. An early pit stop could help him escape traffic, but it could also leave him exposed later. A longer first stint could create opportunities, but only if the tires survive and the gap ahead does not become too large. Every option comes with a hidden weakness. Pit early, and Hamilton may gain clean air. But he may have to protect older tires near the end. Stay out longer, and he may gain track position. But he could lose valuable time behind cars he should be able to pass. Wait for a safety car, and the race might come back toward him. But safety cars do not arrive because a team needs them. They arrive without warning, or not at all. That uncertainty is what makes Formula One strategy so brutal. A team can make the correct decision based on everything it knows, and still lose because the race changes one lap later. For Hamilton, the penalty makes that danger even greater. There is less flexibility now. Fewer comfortable choices. More dependence on timing, traffic, and events outside his control. But strategy is only part of the story. The emotional effect may be just as important. Hamilton has spent years competing under enormous attention. Every move is examined. Every radio message is discussed. Every result becomes part of a much larger debate about form, pressure, and expectation. A penalty adds fuel to that attention. Now, every moment of recovery could be presented as proof of his ability. Every delay could be treated as evidence of a deeper problem. And that creates a difficult environment for any driver, no matter how experienced. Because experience does not remove pressure. It changes how a driver carries it. Hamilton knows how quickly a Formula One weekend can turn. He knows that frustration can damage decision-making. He also knows that forcing the car beyond its limits does not always create speed. Sometimes, it only creates another mistake. So the challenge becomes psychological. Can he accept the penalty without allowing it to control the race? Can he stay calm while every lap reminds him of the positions he lost? Can he choose the right moment to attack, even when the instinct to recover immediately becomes overwhelming? Those questions may decide more than raw performance. And there is another detail that deserves attention. A recovery drive can look successful on the timing screen while quietly failing in strategic terms. Hamilton could pass several cars and still lose contact with the battle that matters most. He could gain places but use too much tire. He could produce brilliant overtakes while his original target disappears up the road. That is the contradiction. Progress does not always mean recovery. A driver can move forward and still fall further away from the result he needed. This is why the first half of the race could be misleading. The crowd may see Hamilton climbing through the order. The commentators may focus on each overtake. The timing graphics may show positive movement. But the team will be watching something else. The gap to the true target. Not the car directly ahead. Not the next available position. The result Hamilton was capable of achieving before the penalty changed everything. And if that gap continues to grow, every successful overtake could become less valuable than it appears. That is the hidden danger. Hamilton may win several battles and still lose the war. But the penalty creates one more consequence, and this may be the most important one yet. It changes how much risk the team can accept later. If Hamilton reaches the final part of the race with damaged tires, reduced energy, or lost time, the team could be forced into a desperate choice. Protect the position he has recovered, or gamble for something greater. One choice limits the damage. The other could rescue the weekend. But it could also destroy what remains. And by that point, the 3 places lost on the grid will no longer feel like the whole story. They will feel like the moment that forced every difficult decision that followed. But the most dangerous part of this penalty may not appear in the opening laps. It may appear when Hamilton finally reaches the point where the race should begin to come back toward him. That is usually when the damage becomes visible. Early in a race, a driver can hide problems with fresh tires, full concentration, and aggressive energy use. The car feels alive. The grip is available. Overtaking opportunities appear more often. Later, everything changes. The tires lose their sharpness. The battery must be managed more carefully. The gaps between cars become harder to close. And every extra second spent fighting in traffic starts to matter. This is where Hamilton could face the true cost of starting 3 places lower. Not because 3 positions are impossible to recover, but because recovering them may leave him with fewer weapons when he finally reaches the drivers he actually needs to beat. That difference is crucial. There are cars a driver expects to pass. Then there are cars that define the result. Passing the first group may require speed. Passing the second group requires speed, timing, tire life, energy, and sometimes a little luck. Hamilton may use the best of those resources just reaching the real battle. And when he gets there, the drivers ahead may have cleaner tires, better track position, and the freedom to react to his strategy. That is a major advantage. Imagine climbing several flights of stairs as quickly as possible, only to discover that the real race begins at the top. You have reached the place you needed to be, but you have already spent the energy required to compete there. That is the risk Hamilton now faces. And the team cannot solve it with one perfect call.